Hello and welcome. This tutorial is going to be an introduction to Autodesk Fusion 360, and I'm going to go over some of the key aspects, the graphical user interface, and some of the different tools associated with Fusion 360. I am new to this program, so there might be a few bumps along the road, but that's part of learning, so it'll all work out, and we will actually end up completing this part here, the gear index multi-view sort of part exercise. So yeah, let's get started. So I really like the interface. It's nice and clean. And it's set up very similarly to Onshape and SolidWorks. So the first thing I want to point out is the data panel. So this is where you can actually create projects or things that you want to be grouped with each other. So if you were to create a new project, you could say multi-view assembly projects, and then you could save all your assemblies in here, or if you had like a specific assembly you wanted, like a senior project or something, you could save it as such, and then it would show up when you create a new design. So if I have a new project and then I go to File, New Design, and then I want to save this, so see how it comes up in a tab, and then if I were to save this, it would ask me the location. So multi-view parts, new project. It's a nice way to organize your space, but we don't need that right now. And then also there are samples and trainings and stuff that you can go over with. So different cam samples, design samples, all sorts of stuff like that that will help you learn the program, which I'm probably going to check out. So if you don't want this anymore, you can just archive it and archive, and then it's not pinned to the start. And that's this little Rubik's Cube looking thing over there. All right, so it's basically set up in tabs. So this is kind of like your workspace right now, and it's this one part that I named Gear Index, and you can do that just by creating that new design file and then going from there and then saving to Gear Index. So the nice thing about this is it's all embedded in this, all the different tools you can use, like so generative design, rendering, animation, simulation, manufacturing, so like CAD CAM stuff, and then drawings. It's all in this window. So if I wanted to create a generative design off of this, I would click into there, and it would bring me into a generative design, and now I could specify different parameters that I would want to create the generative design. So it's nice because it literally just grabs this and takes it into that overlay. So from here, there's a few hotkeys that I want to tell you about that are super convenient. So if you're at a weird view like this, right? If you hit F6, if you like zoomed out and you're over here and you can't really get in there, you're just gonna hit F6 and it's gonna zoom in. It's gonna fit the part to the screen, and then you can also just like click this cube. Just like how SolidWorks and how Onshape work. So that's pretty cool. So F6 was that hotkey just to bring it in. And then you can also, so just like other programs, they have, this is like a bunch of different things, tools and settings that you can manage under this part. So if you wanted to say change this the measurement, the default measurement. So we're in metric right now. If you wanted to change that, you would just go in here under document settings. You could and then right over here where it has the pencil on the paper, click on that, and then you can change it here. So if you wanted inches and then you wanted this to be as your default, you just check that off. If you just want this to be in inches, you would click OK, and then only this would be in inches. If you set it to your default, then the other designs you create will also be in millimeters. So so some other things. So if you wanted the origin, it's just that eyeball that pops up, right? If you want to see things. And same thing with sketches, right? So sketches, this is like a history of sketches. You can turn them on if you want to use them or look at them. So yeah, so those are the sketches, and then you can then the body. If you have more bodies in here, then you could hide this body and then work on that other body that you would have in there. And then these are some different view, so panning, so you can pan, constrained orbit, so that's like picking a point and kind of orbiting it around that point. Just different ways to move around, and then zoom in, zoom out. But if you have your mouse, if you have a mouse, which I highly recommend, then you should be good. And just click there, and then F6, and it brings you right in. So that's kind of the basic navigation. Some of the ribbons here. So this is create a sketch. This is what we'll be using a lot, and then just like any parametric 3D modeling, you create the sketch and then you start extruding and creating 3D features that are into that sketch, right? So you extrude that square, you extrude that circle out, and then you can extrude cut, and there's a bunch of different stuff in here. So sweeps, revolves, lofts, ribs, webs, all sorts of stuff. And then there is a hole wizard, which is nice, and threading, which is nice. So on shape there, you kind of have to create your thread. There's probably a plugin you can download, but this is nice about Fusion is you can actually create some threading without doing the helix and then the cuts with the triangle and all that stuff. So nice feature there. And then sheet metal, if you click into these different tools up here, right, they will bring you into, so sheet metal, there are like flanges and different things that you would use, like a bend that you would use more commonly in sheet metal. Surfaces, these tools are more commonly used in surfaces, but we are focusing more on solid modeling, so this is where you want to be. And then the tools are just things to inspect, and so this would actually be an analysis with a cam feature. That's later on, but in 3D printing, right, all that kind of fun stuff, that's later on. Right now we're just going to be, we want to be under this ribbon here, the solid ribbon, and these are all the different features we can use. So when you create a sketch, you'll see this change into two-dimensional things. So when we actually create a sketch, these tools up here will change into things that you can use with two-dimensional sketch. So then there's inspection, and you can figure out different things, and we'll learn how to assign a material to a part. So we're going to make this an aluminum gear index. So that's kind of the rundown on this. So, all right. So I'm gonna create another one of these. So I'm just gonna escape out of there, and then it actually prompts you into like a untitled sort of thing. So I highly recommend saving and rather than just having an untitled part. So gear index number 2 and multi-view part projects, because again I made that as a project. I'm gonna save it, and now I'm in. So so looking at this multi-view drawing here, right? It's all based on circles, and there's patterns going on here, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is create just the overall sort of part, the disk. So that has a radius of 58. So to start that, right, I'm going to create sketch, and now I'm going to click on the front. What I like about Onshape and SolidWorks, they kind of have these planes labeled, but it doesn't really matter, because like they're not technically like, I mean, it's how you're looking at the object, right? That defines these planes. So it's not necessarily that's not like, oh, this is the one and only front plane, right? It's just a labeling convention. So all right, so I'm going to click on front, and I'm going to click here, and so now I'm in the front plane. And I want to make sure that I'm in the correct units, which are metric. So I'm going to click on this little arrow, and indeed I am. So again, if I needed to change it, just click there and change it. So when you create a sketch, it brings up the line type, how you're looking at it, sketch grid, so you can turn off the sketch grid. I like the sketch grid. Snaps. Slice, I'm not really sure what that is, but I'm sure we'll explore that at some point. And so these are just different things that you can do. So 3D sketch, that would allow you to change within planes. So if you had a line that you wanted to go beyond this surface, right? Because right now we're just making a 2D sketch on the front plane. If you wanted to go into the front plane, right, and along maybe the right, then you would use a 3D sketch, and then you could toggle in between where you would want to go. But again, for now, we're gonna focus on the front plane, and I'm gonna start with a center diameter circle. So there are hotkeys to all of these. So if you hover over a tool, that hotkey C is in parentheses next to it. So if I hit the key C, it'll bring me into a circle. And now the circle can have a different line type. It could be construction line. You can also choose the variations of the type of circle you want to put in there. But I just want a center diameter circle. So I'm just going to keep that. I'm going to hover over this center point, the origin, and click on it. Then I'm going to bring it out, click on it again, and then I want to dimension this. So dimension is the D key, and notice that the icon changes next to your cursor. Click here, click out here, and I have a radius of 58. So just like with other programs, you can go like this, 58 times 2. If you don't know that in your head, and you get 116. So now we have the overall circle, the overall disk, and then I'm gonna extrude this. So I have this sketch here. Now I want to finish sketch, and I'm going to add the extrusion element to it. And just like any other parametric program, it gives you some different conditions that you want to put in to the extrusion. So the distance, right? So we are adding, right? So this is going to be a new body at this point. So this is a new body. It's going to create a new body in here. So and we are extruding it out 8 millimeters. So if I put in an 8 millimeters, enter, then it indeed does extrude 8 millimeter disc. All right, very good. So now we are going to go into the hole making. So I'm going to first create this hole, which is 12 diameter. And then there's a counter bore that has a 24 diameter and a depth of 3 millimeters. So again, I'm just going to create a sketch, click on the front face of my part, it brings it in. I'm going to create a circle. C is the hotkey for that. Center point here, and then I'm going to bring this out. D for dimension. Click on the circle, click out here, and that one is going to be 24. Finish sketch, extrude. So now I'm going to be extruding it, and it just walks you through, right? Select the profile. I'm going to select this profile, start at the profile plane, direction, and if I look at the direction, I'm going to notice that's not the direction I want to go to. But I'll be able to fix that in a minute. And for the operation though, right, we're not creating anything new, we're actually cutting. So we're going to cut, and we're going to cut a distance of 3 millimeters. And oh, that's funny. Okay. So it didn't do that for me before, but that's okay. So so instead of doing the 5 millimeters or the 3 millimeters, we're going to do -3 and enter. So -3 millimeters and enter. So that will get us where we want to go. And if we make a mistake, right, we can come back, double click on the sketch, and do something else to the sketch. So finish sketch. And down here is kind of like your history, right? So if you wanted to change this extrusion, right, you can double click in here and make changes to it. So a little bit different. Onshape and SolidWorks have it all kind of lined up here with your sketches, and but this does it a little bit differently. So your history is down here, and then just like you have that that line that you can bring back. So if I wanted to bring it all the way back to a previous version, I can just click and drag it. So cool. And so from here, right, I want to create a another hole, right, a circle in there. So I'm going to click on create a sketch, and I'm going to click into the hole. I'm going to create a circle, so C is the hotkey for that. Bring it out, D for dimension, and that one is going to be 12 millimeters. Finish sketch, and extrude, and I'm going to select this one, and at this time I can do through all, and I want to check to make sure that it's in the right direction, and it isn't. And now I can just click on flip. So flip will bring the cutting direction in the other direction. So then click OK, and now we have a disc with a hole in it. So I'm doing this. I'm pressing down on my scroll wheel. So to do this, I just press down on my scroll wheel. I don't know if I've already said that. All right. And F6 to get me in there again. All right. Cool. So now I am going to start making one of these channels. So one of these channels here, and they're all equally spaced. So there'll be a setting for that when we create a pattern. So again, sketch, click on this face here. Looks like it brought me to the right side up there. And now I'm going to create a circle. And this circle, I'm going to make a construction line. So line type, construction. And then, because this won't manipulate my part, because it's just used as a reference. Dimension D. And that one is 56. All right, now we're going to create another circle, but make sure that this time that construction is off. So this is like a little learning panel, and it tells you like hints and stuff. So this is pretty cool, but we don't need that right now. It'll give us more space here. So now I'm going to create my circle. So just like Onshape and just like SolidWorks, you can go to a point and then kind of drag it up from there, and it will lock in. It'll be snapped onto that point. So if I wanted to, I want it lined up with the origin and here, and then it kind of snaps on there. That's good. And now I'm going to dimension this out, and we have this dimension here, so which is kind of an awkward way to dimension this, but it is 12 millimeters, so it's 12 millimeter diameter. And then from here, we are going to click on L for line. And then again, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I want to get on the quadrant of this. So if I go like that, if I go from the center and move it out, I want it on the quadrant of the circle. So click once. And then again, if I'm having issues here, hit F6. And then notice that the constraint is vertical. There's that vertical line next to it, and then click the outer edge, and then I'm going to go down again here, so from the center there, and notice how it snaps, and F6 again to bring me out, and I'm going to snap it so it's vertical. I don't want it over here. And notice that constraint, that parallel constraint is showing up on both of those lines. So those two kind of like backslashes or forward slashes. Okay, so now from here, I need to trim this out. So T is the hotkey for trim. Click there, and that looks pretty good. So, and notice how these are tangent, which is what I want. I want them tangent to that circle, and they are parallel to one another. So now, so what I can do also, instead of finishing the sketch is I can go into solid, and then I'll go into extrude, and it grabs that sketch. So it grabs that sketch for you. And so this is good. Although I wanted to make a pattern with it, right? So rather than doing this, rather than extruding it, I'm just going to hit cancel, and I'm going to go, and it brings me back into my sketch. So that's good. So from here, now I want to make a circular pattern. So click on circular pattern. It's going to ask you the objects, so you can make a window. And make a window and select them. And we want it full. I don't want it suppressed. Full. What's going on here? Oh, center point. Okay. So click the center point. So select down here, and then our center point is going to be the origin. And now it asks you how many, and we want 5. So 5 and enter. Okay, cool. So now we have these 5 equally spaced channels. So if I go to solid, I go to extrude, and then I'm going to select my my channels. I am going to, this is not going to be a new body, it's going to be a cut, and the distance is going to be all, and then I'm just going to look, and it's not in the right direction, so I'm going to flip it, and then OK. So cool. Starting to come out now, and F6 will reorient, so click on the front, and F6 will get me back. Okay, so now what we have to do is create some angles, some arcs that are cut out here. So we're actually gonna do that in a similar way. So what I'm gonna do is create a sketch here, and I'm gonna use an arc. So if you don't see it up here, you gotta click down, and then it's gonna be arc, and it's a 3-point arc. So select the start. So if you don't know, it tells you. So arc, right? 3-point arc. So it actually tells you create an arc using 3 points. Select the start, end, and then a point on the arc. So that's what I'm going to use. So click in there, and then I have a start, I have an end, and then I have a point in the arc. So I know the distance here. So I know these distances are 8. So they are 8. So D for dimension, and I'm going to click that point and that point. Make that 8 millimeters. Click that point and that point. Make that 8 millimeters. And then I also know the radius. So if I click this, and the radius is indeed 30. So now it's all black because it's fully defined. So that's a good thing. And now I am going to make another circular pattern. And I'm just going to select the arc and the center point, which is the origin again. And now this is going to be 5 again. So there's 5 arcs there. And so from here, I'm going to click on solid, I'm going to click on extrude, and I'm going to select all the profiles, I'm going to select a distance to be through all, and I'm going to do cut. And again, I'm just going to look, and again, it's not in the right way. So click on flip, and then click OK. So there you have it. You have your first gear index. Congratulations if you got to this point. I'm going to show you now how to get some mass properties out of it. So the first thing we have to do is assign a material to it. So if we go over to bodies and we right click on that body, we can go down to physical material, and then there's a bunch of different materials in here, ceramic, electronics, fabric, flooring. So what we're going to use is metal, and we're going to use aluminum. So I guess this is kind of like a generic aluminum. So what you do is you click on it, and then you just bring it out here. And now you have an aluminum part. So if you wanted it to be steel, you would click on the steel and bring it out here. Now it's a steel part. So we want to use aluminum, and notice the color changes for you. And so now it's an aluminum part. We can actually get some properties of it. So if I right click on the part and go down to properties, right click over here on the body and then click on properties, and it will give you the area, the density, the mass, like the physical material, volume, etc., etc. So usually we want to know the mass, just to check to make sure that everybody has the correct part, right? Because that's a good way to check to see if you actually have you made all the right cuts, the right, because if it's different than 133.745, then you made a mistake somewhere. So yeah, and in the center of mass, which would be probably here, is 4.051, because if you remember, we extruded it 8. So it has a thickness of 8, right? And then it's leaning on the 051 side because of that counter bore, right? It's not a flat plate without a counter bore, so that take away some mass there. So yeah, so that's the basics of Autodesk Fusion and your first created part. So from here, you can also export. So you can export into different formats, right? You can, if you were trying to print this, you could do it in STL. If you wanted it as an image, you could export it as an image. So there's a lot of different things you can do with it, just like any other 3D modeling program. So good work. And I hope you had fun going through the beginnings of Autodesk Fusion.